Welcome back. We are very excited that you are still here and still putting up with us because we know that Hannah's a handful. She can sometimes be a little much. But today, aside from that, we are talking about accessibility and accessibility stereotypes that are kind of associated with it. And I feel like our introductions are often very short and sweet, but I think that's okay because I definitely know I've watched some other videos where the introduction's like 4 minutes and it's like, oh my god, get on with it. But here we go.
Accessibility can often be portrayed incorrectly, and it's like showed as like only people in wheelchairs need to be accessible, but it's not accessible for people that are blind and deaf and have other disabilities.
The often main picture associated with accessibility is that wheelchair sign that everybody knows, but so that's what accessibility is. If something is accessible, it has like the buttons for door opening for people in wheelchairs or like wheelchair ramps. But often people with sight needs or hearing needs are often overlooked. Buildings can become accessible for blind people by including your braille signs or large print signs that anybody can read, or even just making sure that there isn't objects sticking out like chairs are pushed in restaurants and there's not things on the floor that they can be tripped on, and even making sure that staff are educated about how to work with and approach somebody with a general disability. So making sure that maybe if you're in a sports complex that people know how to sighted guide or can just know how to talk to people, that like if you're in retail, you know how to assist someone with visual impairment when they're using the debit machine or whatever and reading it out to them versus just being kind of oblivious.
And also, staff should have training on like how to sign and blind deaf sign, so that like if somebody comes into this public place, then they know how to deal with it. And also for a deaf person, like to have subtitles on like TV and screens and stuff.
And on that note of audio, having subtitles for deaf people as well as proper audio for visually impaired people, like I think a new thing that's becoming popular is debit machines that talk, or just other screens that will read out the content. Like ATMs now have headphone plugins so that blind people can insert headphones and have what's on the screen read to them. Also, one of my favorite accessibility things is crosswalks. Crosswalks are becoming so much more accessible with the beeping sounds and stuff. And short story time, one of the crosswalks that I use when I walk to work is that it's not accessible. It doesn't have beeping or anything, so I have to listen to the traffic to know when to go. And there was one lady who was on the other side of the street, and as I was crossing, she stopped me in the middle of the road to ask me how I knew when to cross. And she's like, there wasn't any beep. How did you know when to cross? And meanwhile, I'm literally standing in the middle of the road being like I was like, I just did, and walked away because I was like, I'm trying to cross the road here and not die and get hit by a car. Like, if you want to have a conversation with me, let's talk later, ma'am. Like, but I love that now you can, the ones that are accessible, they have like raised arrows pointing in the direction that they're crossing, and then you can like press them, and if you press and hold them, it'll talk to you, or if you press it, keep your hand on it, it'll like vibrate for deaf people. And I think there's so many ways that everything is becoming more accessible for more than just wheelchairs. And there's actually a new thing in Canada that by 2020, something like that, all public facilities have to be accessible, and I'm so here for it.
Schools are also becoming very accessible because they're coming up with like more advanced technology and it's all coming in at a very rapid pace, and resources are becoming more available and more common in students with all different kinds of needs, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things was when my school, we had a lot of like the soccer posts and like poles in the way. So they put the, first of all, black and yellow tape on the inside ones, but the outside ones, they painted yellow. But being colorblind, I feel like colorblind is more of an issue than the actual blindness for me, is because the pole and the yellow look so similar in shade that I actually couldn't see the yellow, and it's that whole idea of bright colors again. They're like, oh, it's such a bright color, she'll be able to see it, and I'm like, it looks the same as everything else, and they literally painted everything yellow, and I'm like, you did nothing, because they didn't even ask me. They're like, will this help you? They just kind of like assumed that it worked for other people so that it would work for me, which that's another accessibility thing, is that just because it works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. I know there's many different types of things out there for different types of people.
Speaking of some things help one person but don't help another, as being the younger sibling who goes to all of the older siblings' schools, it is very frustrating for me when all the teachers that Emily have had now have me, and then suddenly they think that everything that Emily needs, I need. So I'll often be asked, oh, Emily used this, you probably need it too, right? And my vision is much better than yours.
I find it so ironic because we're so different.
Mm-hmm.
We're so different. We're not even like anywhere near close to each other.
Yeah, and I think that's another funny thing is that though we both have the same colored of paper, and like we both find like the same shade like most helpful to the eyes, I think that's very funny because we have two totally different types of vision, and people often compare our visions and our needs, and they're just completely different.
We both have very pink paper. It's really funny. People always ask me like, what? Why do you have pink paper? I'm like, because I do.
Yeah, I remember.
Darker contrast. Doesn't hurt the eyes.
I remember at one school they had a drawer labeled Emily's pink paper, and then I started using it. It's just like, well, it's not Emily's anymore.
So another common form of accessibility that is becoming better but is still sort of lacking is online accessibility, and including photo descriptions or alt text, aka alternative texts on photos. I know Instagram now has a feature where you can add alt text, and basically it's so that when it goes over the photo, a screen reader your description that you put in the screen reader will read to the person who is visually impaired or blind. Or just adding a photo description in your caption, which we do on our Instagram page, try to as much as possible, because we know that it's important. Otherwise, I think that just about covers it. Let us know what you think needs to be more accessible, or what accessibility you're really happy with.
You can also hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.